Hello and welcome to coverage of Grand Prix Helsinki for the MSEM format. I'm Caillou, and today we're watching the round 4 match between Sakon, otherwise known as HonchkrowDavid, who's playing Mardu ArisTomeCrats, and Gateways, who's playing Sultai Dreamsight Control. David's deck is a grindy Aristocrats deck, which also has a one-card combo finish in Tome of Loss, which is an artifact which you can use to bring back all creatures below a certain power threshold from your graveyard to the battlefield, which allows you to generally bring back a sack outlet, a blood artist, and then a bunch of sack targets. Meanwhile, Gateways is playing Dreamsight Control, which is a control deck which essentially is 140 cards because of the requirements of its titular card Dreamsight, which draws you 5 cards if you have 100 or more cards in library, and then gets around the problems of variants that come with a 140 card deck by running a lot of redundancy and having a lot of tutors. So David with the aggressive start, playing out the Shadowban Consul. This is one of the powerful recursive aggressive creatures that the deck has. His deck is so resilient at recovering from most board wipes, which is one of the problems with aggro decks, is that you need some way to get that reach. But lots of times, even if you have burn, control decks these days have finishers which gain them life, so they'll just wipe, gain some life, and then your lava spikes no longer function as reach. David's deck gets around that with, of course, Tome of Loss being a one-card combo, and also just the ability to have recursive creatures to just attrition out your opponent out of their removal and wipes, and makes it so that life gain alone can't win them the game. So David gonna run out of Goblin Twin Blades. It's not much, essentially dragon fodder on a creature, but being on a creature is important for Tome of Loss. And then gets to swing in for 2 with the Shadowban Consul. Ideally, turn 3, I think David probably wants a Blood Artist effect or a Turned Watcher. So I think this is definitely not super great for David, but starting next turn can Imperial City to try and flip into some better cards. Okay, so Gateways is going to tap out for their first spell of the game, Recall Forgotten Aeons. Just going to draw up some more cards and get some RAM. Recall is also one of the deck's win cons because it's a revelation, which means that it's a sorcery which you can cast from your graveyard as a creature. There's the turn 3 play that David would have wanted. Turned Watcher. He's going to swing in for 4 with the Shadowban Consul and the Goblin Twin Blades, and if Gateways doesn't have an immediate answer to this Turned Watcher, things could get ugly. Of course, if something like a Violent Collapse puts David very behind here. So Gateway's going to open up with a Soul Leak on the Turned Watcher, which is a good call. Turned Watcher is a very scary card, just because you'd think that the combat damage to a player draw a card line wouldn't stack, but it does. If you sack multiple creatures to it, it can kind of just go ham. But I guess Gateways doesn't have anything else, so it's just going to take 4 more from the Shadowban Consul plus Goblin Twin Blades. And oh god, and also has an Unbound Dremora, forces Gateways to discard a card. The important part of this is that Gateways dies next turn if they don't have a wipe. Or they could have spot removal for a creature, which would save them for a turn. Okay, on end of turn, Gateways has a Memento Mori, but David's probably just going to sack the Goblin. And David could still have lethal if David has a Blood Artist effect plus a sack outlet next turn, or basically just a Blood Artist effect is really what it is. Otherwise, still a respectable 2-turn clock for David right here. Oh, but Gateway's going to play Liliana at the Brink, gets 2 1/1 blockers. So David's going to swing everything at face, just ignoring the Liliana. And Gateway's playing fast and loose, going to take the damage from the Unbound Dremora, but kill Shadowban Consul and the Goblin Twin Blades. Of course, Consul can come back, so this means that David still threatens lethal next turn if he has some sort of answer to Liliana. Okay, and in response to blocks, is going to sacrifice Shadowban Console to Imperial City, trying to get some card advantage. Notably, though, this does mean that Gateways gets to keep this zombie token, though I guess he'll just die next turn to Liliana's static, is the thought. Okay, and reveals a young Necromancer off of the Imperial City. That's one of the powerful cards that allows David to rebuild from wipes because of its ability to just give you a skeleton token for each creature that dies. Yeah, this is just going to be hard for David to fight through these ground blockers. And on end, Gateways has a second Memento Mori. That explains the previous blocks. Doesn't have to worry about Unbound Remora. In response, David's going to bring back Shadowban Console from his graveyard and then sacrifice a Shadowban Console instead. So Dremora is safe. Okay, Gateway's going to +1 Liliana again. Doesn't play anything else. Interesting that Gateway's, or I guess doesn't have a Swamp or Force Reveal for the Hidden Hovel. I thought this was a different land. But yeah, next turn we'll have enough mana to be able to bring back Recall Forgotten Aeons from grave. Okay, so David is swinging. At face? I guess so. And it just gets chomped by one of the zombie tokens. Like, yeah, this just onslaught of 2 chump blockers each turn is just going to be so hard for David to deal with. Okay, David plays a young Necromancer, but Gateways has the Cursory Glance to counter it. And then David apparently has a second Shadowban Console in hand. Yeah, I think just, like, has to have some way of dealing with this Liliana, I feel like. Okay, Gateway's going to swing in for 1 with this zombie. David's just going to take it. And I think Gateway's just +1 Liliana, cast Recall Forgotten Aeons, and is in a really good position at that point. Because a Recall blocks so well, and then Gateways has 2 blockers on top of that. Oh no! Has a Violent Collapse, which I think is strong, in that I guess it removes both of David's creatures, but they are recurable. So I suppose that next turn Gateways should just play Recall Forgotten Aeons. And god, David just playing one of the last cards in his hand, Autumnal Watch. And then passing. Can still recur both of the Shadowban Consoles on end, but like, David is hemorrhaging life total right now. I don't know if it's worth it. Okay, Gateways, instead of playing Recall Forgotten Aeons, has a Conjure Realities. This is a great tutor. Let's see what Gateways is going to get. Could just get Memento Mori and exile David's grave. Or Dreamsight Well to refill back up is also an acceptable option, especially with Gateways at 1 card in hand. Okay, and then he's going to swing in with the 2 zombie tokens. David's just going to take it. And yeah, this just makes it so much harder to recur Shadowban Console safely. And David just drawing and passing just doesn't have anything to stop Gateways' onslaught. And then so Gateways is going to -4 Liliana, giving David the -1/-1 counter emblem. And now, like, many of the creatures that David has are just turned offline because of their 1 toughness. Like, David's out here is essentially Blood Artist effect and a black land. Gateways is only going to swing for 1, which is surprising to me. Because, yeah, I feel like you would swing with both of them. Yeah, there's no reason not to just swing with both of them there. And yeah, now, actually I completely forgot about Tome of Loss. And yeah, David is just going to sacrifice Tome of Loss, bring back Shadowban Consoles and the Young Necro, and then just swings in for lethal on Gateways. I feel like almost every time that Gateways has used the Liliana emblem, it's always seemed like the right play, and then 2 seconds afterwards it would have been like, no, it would have been better if you just kept creating zombies. Also surprised that Gateways didn't tap out there for the Recall Forgotten Aeons. Yeah, let's look at sideboarding to see what these players could bring in. So I think probably bringing in the 4th Violent Collapse. Moon Rises is also a good card to main in. Stand Unassailable as well because of the aggro bent. So probably just everything other than Nature's Claim and Conjuring of Locust is coming in. Meanwhile, for David, I think you'll bring in another Tome of Loss, another Unbound Remora. Seal the Tomb is pretty good here versus the Revelations. So I think that's probably my read on what will come in, but I think David's main should be pretty well protect for this matchup. At least that's the hope. So I think any changes that David makes will likely be minimal. And David, instead of opening up aggressively this time, is going to open up aristocratically, Sadistic Indulgence for 3 tokens. It's an incredibly powerful card that functions as both a sack outlet and also creates sack fodder. Oh, and it looks like David did bring in Sorcerer's Spyglass. Naming what, though? Okay, so revealing 3 lands, Wicked Weaving, Memento Mori, and Liliana at the brink. So yeah, I guess Sorcerer's Spyglass is for this Liliana. So he's just going to name Liliana at the brink. But Wicked Weaving and Memento Mori are both effective against David's deck, because Memento Mori can exile David's graveyard, Wicked Weaving can just wipe the board. Just both really threatening for David's primary game plan. In fact, this might sound stupid, but like, I would almost not be opposed to just running out a Wicked Weaving on these human tokens before David gets a Blood Artist effect, which might sound dumb, but I think that David getting a Blood Artist effect is the scariest thing that can happen, especially with these tokens. And if David starts stacking them, you'll just be in for a world of hurt. Gateways, however, is not going to Wicked Weaving. He's just going to play a land and pass. So David is going to play Zadina Envoys. This is another creature where it's like, it does not matter if you have a wipe, because I will just get more value out of it. But Gateway's eminently aware of that, going to play a top-decked Pierce the Storm to counter it. And David is just forced to pass again. Again, these tokens are great sack fodder, but since they can't attack or block, don't really do much in the way of aggression. Oh man, and Gateways with another powerful top deck is going to play SM Lauger Champion. And now SM can just start exiling all of David's important creatures, both from graveyard and from battlefield, and provides a strong clock. And there's the Blood Artist effect. David just going to pass after that. But yeah, I think if you're Gateways, I think you just immediately -3 SM on the Twilight Blade. But no, Gateways is just going to Wicked Weaving. In response, yeah, David can just sack them to Sadistic Indulgence and get the drain anyways. And so David doesn't get, Gateways doesn't get any of the life neutral ability of Wicked Weaving versus a Blood Artist. And then he's going to +2 SM to exile the Twilight Blade and then ping David for 2 more. I feel like in that situation, just -3ing SM on the Twilight Blade would have achieved a similar effect and saved Gateways a card. And, 4 life. Okay. David opening up with a Brotherhood Conspirant and then into an Autumnal Watch. Bunch of cheap sack outlets, but nothing to use them with now. So actually that wipe of Gateways ended up being a good play. Okay, so he's going to sacrifice Brotherhood Conspirant to Autumnal Watch, revealing a Blood Artist. Gonna Windmill Slam that, and then just pass. Yeah, I think this immediately gets SM'd. But Gateway's just drawing and passing, not even activating SM. Not even +2ing SM for the hell of it. That is a punt by Gateways, if I've ever seen one. Okay, David gonna run in a Turned Watcher. Gateways does not have the answer to this. And a Young Necro. And then David's gonna swing in for 1 on the SM. Just try to tick her down quickly. But yeah, Young Necro plus Autumnal Watch plus Blood Artist is a terrifying combo in and of itself. Turned Watcher just puts it over the top, because if Gateways doesn't have an answer to this, can just swoop and kill David. But also I forgot that Wicked Weaving has Flashback. Yep, that is going to happen. Probably in response, David just sacks everything and then gains a bunch of life. Because Young Necro basically makes each creature into 2 creatures, so you just... the sequencing of this is a little wacky, but then the upshot of it is that I think David drains Gateways for 7, which, once again, I think Gateways is misplaying horrifically, by not just minus 3ing SM on the Blood Artist effect before doing this. So you have Gateways takes a total of 7 damage, and David gains up 7. And then Wicked Weaving basically resolves into an empty board. Once again, I guess Gateways now gets to plus SM and then exile the Blood Artist. It's getting rid of Young Necro. Okay. I think Blood Artist, I guess Gateways' thought is it doesn't matter, but I think Blood Artist is more dangerous because you can immediately get it back with Tome of Loss if David top decks that. But David is empty-handed and has top decked a land. So at this point, Gateways' game plan is just keep plussing SM and then alter when possible. And God, has the natural Ravaging Tyrant. Yeah, this is just game. I'm going to continue to plus 2 SM. So I think David is just dead next turn because Ravaging Tyrant attacks in for 10, and then Gateways ults SM, draining David for what is it at this point? 8? Yup. And David can't even have a blocker for the Ravaging Tyrant because of Ravaging Tyrant's sack trigger. And it looks like David doesn't have an answer. So yeah, in response to the Ravaging Tyrant attacking, David is going to concede. We're going to a Game 3. Both players snap keeping as we go into Game 3. And with David now on the play, I think this could be problematic for Gateways. And David has had a different black 1-drop each game of this set. This time the Brotherhood Conspirant, which is a sack outlet, which works well with Tome of Loss, because every time you surveil with Brotherhood Conspirant, you can basically just dump more cards into graveyard for your Tome. But surprisingly enough, Gateways has a turn 1 black play of their own. Dark Bargain. I'm going to just cantrip real quick, but I think the life loss on that might come back to bite Gateways. Okay. Curves into a Twilight Blade. So now it has the classic combo of sack outlet plus Blood Artist effect. Now really the last thing, the last piece of the equation is just sack fodder. So if David has a Sadistic Indulgence or something, he can really start popping off next turn. And Gateways, because they're on the draw, doesn't have the mana for a wipe yet. And David with the perfect mana, all 3 snow-covered basics, gonna swing in with Twilight for 2, and the Sorcerer's Spyglass again. I think David is very much hoping to name and hit SM. So, Ravaging Tyrant, Wicked Weaving, and 4 lands for 4 Gateways. So, if you're David here, I think you emphatically name SM because no walkers are revealed. Last time Liliana made sense because Gateways literally had Liliana, but yeah. And the crazy part about this is Gateways' only relevant card here is the Wicked Weaving. The Ravaging Tyrant, by the time Ravaging Tyrant can come down, Gateways has basically already won, and obviously the lands are not relevant interaction. Probably was hoping to Dark Bargain into something more. So yep, David is going to just name SM with the Sorcerer's Spyglass. A spicy tech could have been to name this Dark Bargain to cut off a little bit of Gateways' draw power, but I think that would have been a little too spicy. But yeah, Gateways is just going to crack the Dark Bargain, draw into another card. Oh, and Gateways with the top deck Soul Leak is going to take out the Twilight Blade. In response, I think David is just going to sack it to the Brotherhood Conspirant. Yep. Okay, David has another sack outlet in the form of Imperial City, but being down to 2 cards in hand and apparently has no other interaction, this doesn't bode well. I feel like David's deck has a severe lack of card advantage engines, and that just ends up costing him a lot. And it just has so many moving pieces that it needs to function. So David is going to Imperial City sacking the mountain, kind of risky, because what if David hits a red card off of this? I guess wants to keep the Brotherhood Conspirant around more than the red land. It hits a Wayfarer's Shrine off of the Imperial City, so he's going to get that mountain back regardless. Oh, and I guess that David knew that he was going to hit a land anyways because of the Brotherhood Conspirant Surveil. So David with the young Necro, and Gateways just playing lands and passing. I guess the thought is, at some point I will get to the mana for Ravaging Tyrant, and that's all I need. Okay, David is once more going to Imperial City on end. Gets another land, and is clearing these off the top of his library, and has the Shadowban Console. So yeah, now even if Gateways runs out the Wicked Weaving, David essentially gets 3 skeletons plus can recur Shadowban Console on end. Okay, so Gateways is just going to play a natural Dreamsight well. Draws a whopping 5 cards right here. And tap 3 more Wicked Weaving. So in response, David is actually going to sack Shadowban Console, which means that David actually does not get to keep the skeleton in response to the wipe, but will still get 2 skeletons. No, okay, it's also going to sack the skeleton, I guess because it's going to die anyways. Okay, David's going to play a second Brotherhood Conspirant and then swing in for 2 with the skeletons. At this point actually presents a 3-turn clock because David can recur the Shadowban Console from grave. Interesting note is that David has the mana to be able to Shadowban Console and also Imperial City land if David wants to. Gateways, however, is now at 7 mana, so can now play that Ravaging Tyrant we saw earlier. And I think that just ends the game for David. But no, okay, Gateway's playing a second Wicked Weaving. Okay, so David's going to sack everything to Conspirant in response. And on end of turn, David's going to sack City to itself to activate its ability. And is also going to recur Shadowban Console, I assume? No, doesn't recur the Shadowban Console. That seems like a punt from David to me. Okay, going to play out Zadina Envoys, but Gateways is just going to Pierce the Storm it. Also, apparently, God, David had another Imperial City. And then just going to play a young Necro and then pass. Yeah, this Imperial City is basically just the card advantage engine that David has been needing these all these games ago. But yeah, it just didn't get there. And David's going to concede in response to Gateways exiting his young Necro. Because he knows that Gateways just windmill slams Ravaging Tyrant next turn, and that's it. But yeah, damn. I think this time Gateways was just able to have multiple wipes, and I think David's deck is just, it seems like it feels very clunky when it doesn't come together, and it doesn't come together often enough. I think a more refined version where each of the cards is more individually impactful, and David has, and which has more card advantage engines or blitz speed, could be fine. But right now it's in a weird, awkward place where it's not quite fast enough to blitz and not quite grindy enough to actually compete versus some of the more controlling decks. But yeah, until next time, this is Caillou signing off.